You're listening to the Rogers Waterfowl Podcast. This is Aaron Jones.
Chandler Smith here. Let's talk some waterfowl. Scott, are you hunting honkers right now? Big honkers? I think that's what you got up where you're from.
Yeah, see, up here in Rochester, Minnesota, Minnesota is kind of the home of the resident goose. We have about 150,000 breeding pairs on an average year. So the resident goose, also known as the giant goose, is primarily what we hunt up here. Here in Rochester, where we're located, is kind of the rebirth or the ground zero of where they rediscovered them back in 1962. So primarily most of the geese we're hunting here are the bigger goose, you know, the 10 and a half, 11-pound goose. They haven't quite got down here yet, but they should be soon with this weather coming up. Of course, we got a lot of locals and stuff like that, but the migrators coming out of Manitoba, probably here start to really see them good starting here, probably the end of the week, early next week, and then continuing on for there. So yeah, it's big goose country up here.
Yeah, I've seen some of the videos from different things. Just it's kind of funny. I'm not the best goose call in the world. I'm all right. I'm pretty decent, but I've learned probably everything from the Bad Grammar DVD, and that thing.
Oh,
was,
sure.
That thing was like one of the best put together instructional DVDs I've ever watched, because I watched a few when I first started waterfowl hunting years and years ago. I mean, I probably started 8-10 years ago. And
sure,
that Bad Grammar DVD was enjoyable to watch, and it was great information. And for you guys who haven't for the listeners who haven't watched that, I mean, it goes through from the very, very basics of holding the call, and then to the different calls and why you did them, and then recordings of the geese doing them and all sorts of stuff, and how you use them in the field. I mean, it was a really awesome DVD to watch.
Can you believe it's already 10 years old?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I tell you what, we still a lot of people still purchase them because of the reasons you went into, just the in-depth and relating to the bird first philosophy. Pretty much with everything that we do in that DVD is you get to watch and listen to the goose doing the sound, so you can understand the sequence, the tone of it, and also, kind of their body language, so you can get a feeling and put that inflection into your calling when you're learning as well. So yeah, it was done a while ago, but I guess it's still holding up today as people are still enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to mean something. I mean, being and goose calling, I feel like you need that inflection and you need that emotion. And you need to understand why you're calling, and I think that video really did that, because a lot of guys could go out there and not know exactly why they're making these notes, or why the birds are swinging, but they're not coming back around, and they're just missing a couple key points and a couple tricks that are, different style of calling that you talk about in different scenarios that can bring birds back in, as far as the comeback and that all that inflection, and then I can't remember all the names of them, but I can visually see the notes and what you guys are talking about. But there's so many different styles of different calls that you're talking about that do different things, and
sure,
it's an awesome video to watch. And yeah, like you said, you can still get that on DVD. I think people still have DVD players.
A few of them. Yeah, they're still out there. Absolutely. And we also have that academy now for the mobile version. But yeah, that inflection that you're pointing out, it's one thing to be able to make the sound. It's another thing to be able to put emotion or inflection into that sound, because that's what it's going to take out hunting. It's not all about sounding exactly like the goose. It's kind of like sounding like a goose with bad grammar, with a lot of emotion, a lot of drawn out notes, kind of going above and beyond the standard note that a goose does is what's going to call geese, day in and day out. So that body language that you can witness in there, that kind of helps you understand the feeling that the goose is putting into it. And then when you put into a goose call, obviously it's louder and carries more. You can drag it out a little bit more and whatnot. So, that was probably one of the key points in it, and why it's been successful for so long is because it's that learning from that bird, that interaction, being able to see that is very important.
Yeah, early on in my in the goose calling and the goose hunting, I don't think my sound was the best, but I was always pretty emotional, and I think I had a lot of success for that. I mean, my comeback call I felt like was like the winner as far as getting them really to turn back and make it, and and finish up. And it was horrible. It was like a cluck and a long honk, and but I put a lot of emotion into it, and I felt like it worked all the time, and that was my favorite thing. I was excited for them to be, kind of banking over to the right, and you just, at that certain point, you kind of know they're at that in between. They're paying attention, or they're thinking about going somewhere else, and you hit that, and it just gets them locked up, and they're finally committed. But I don't think I sounded great at all, but I put a lot of emotion, a lot of stress into that call, and I had a lot of success with it, even though it didn't sound that
great. Absolutely. And sometimes the sounds that don't sound exactly like a goose are probably the ones that work the best most of the time. It's just an exaggerated plead and whatnot that can turn a not so good day into a pretty good day. So absolutely.
And you mentioned a little bit, and I kind of saw it on Facebook, but this academy that you have going, you explain a little bit about that? Because I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So basically, like we said, is the DVD is 10 years old now. And I think you mentioned it that, I'm not sure that people have DVD players anymore. It's kind of an archive or a dinosaur of the times a little bit. I don't think they put disk drives in laptops anymore. So everything's mobile, streamed and whatnot. So basically we took that bad grammar concept and we put it onto an academy where you can basically have the same experience, but just on your mobile device, whether it's a phone or a tablet, because, today's lifestyles are very, very busy, on the run. Finding time to practice and sit down can be very, very tough. So this way, you don't have to have a TV with a DVD player in a house with nobody around to practice. That can be a hard place to find something with all those three things going. So this allows people to, go out in their garage, maybe it'll be on their lunch break, sitting in their car, out on a graveled road somewhere, scouting at night. They can have this academy, it's on their phone or on their laptop, and it goes through all the same teachings and whatnot. Just make it practicing on your time and wherever that place may be, easier, I think, is the whole concept of it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And one thing we just got jumped right in, but we forgot to tell the listeners who we're talking to. This is Scott from Molt Gear. And how do you say your last name? Is it Threinen or Threinen?
Threinen. The H is silent.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yes.
And you are the owner of Molt Gear, or?
That is correct. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So explain a little bit about how Molt Gear started.
It started in 2006, and it kind of started off the concept of bad grammar. The CD we released in 2006, and then the DVD released in 2008. And basically, back then I was big into contest calling. The live goose was kind of around and whatnot. I guess it still is today, but just starting up. And so had this idea of bringing the recordings of the goose to hunters, here in Rochester, having the historic lake here in town and the geese around all the time. I was around geese a lot, and I thought that there was a lot of stuff that geese do and geese say, and the emotion that they put into it that isn't being released out onto the consumer market at that time. So basically I went around and got about 30 hours of live recordings of geese doing the different notes that I wanted to talk about on a goose call. Most of them, or some of them, were new notes and whatnot to the goose calling, and basically use those recordings so people could listen to each specific note that goose was doing, talk about the emotion and the body language in it, and then talk about also when to use it hunting out in the field. It's one thing to be able to, make a note on a goose call. It's another thing to know, a little bit about when to use it out while you're hunting as well. So that's basically how Molt Gear started, was the concept of the Bad Grammar CD and the live recordings, just being around geese, the bird first philosophy. And we started with a CD back in July of 2006, and that had a bunch of success. So we released Bad Grammar, the DVD, in February of 2008. And then we got into our instructional-based hunting DVDs, the Goose Societies, and and then eventually calls, and it just kind of took off from there. But that's how it started 12 years ago.
Yeah, all those are great videos. Even the Duck Society is a really as a favorite of mine. I like some of the points you made on the Duck Society about our decoys and how they're just stagnant in their statues, and you got videos of above live birds, just being active, and it makes me want to have all motion decoys in the spread, because that's what a realistic spread looks like a lot of times on these dabbling ducks.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. A duck is a very fidgety animal. They are constantly moving, constantly just looking for the next opportunity. You'll very rarely that you'll just see a duck, sleeping or resting or not moving. They're very, very active, whether they're on water or on land. So yeah, in the Duck Society, that was definitely an interesting perspective to get above them and videotape down on, probably about 30, 40 mallards, and just to see how much water and how much movement 30 to 40 mallards can create is incredible. And then a lot of duck hunters will go out with, a dozen or 2 dozen decoys. And, I'm guilty of it too. You just hope that there's about 10 not very smart ones, So it's just really tough to mimic a live duck on water, and that's why the spinners have been so successful, because it kind of takes their mind off of what's actually happening on the water, and it just has that visual. But yeah, that was a fun DVD to make.
So when did you guys start making duck and goose calls?
We started making calls in 2012, the end of 2012, and then I think we released them in 2013. Was the first one with our EX3 series, and then about a year and a half, 2 years later, we released the Reflex, and then it's almost 3 years now, is the Rush. So we just got into calls. We thought that was kind of the next avenue, or the next thing after the DVDs was to release, some goose and duck calls for people. And so we've been building those for about, 5 years now. And it's a daily process, but it's going pretty good.
Yeah, we do really well with your goose calls and duck calls in the store and online. I know we got an orders being built right now. But yeah, they're one of our top goose calls. It's the quality and the
love the look of them too. They are just a sharp looking call, no doubt. The bright colors and just, they just the fill colors and everything. The color combos you guys have are outstanding. For our listeners out there, can you go through the different series like the EX3, the Reflex, and the MG, and just kind of talk about what each series has, what it's all about, and maybe the differences between them? So if someone is sitting down and they're looking at your website or they're looking at our website and they just want to kind of know what the difference is.
Sure. We released the EX3 X series first. It is built around what we primarily hunt around here, and much of the Midwest is a giant Canada goose. That goose call was designed to sound like a true giant. It's very, very full, got a very powerful tone to it, but it also has a great low-end mellow tone with a lot of range in it. The EX3 X series is very, very efficient goose call. And what I mean by that is there's no real waste to the air. During our design process and now our machining process of those, it goes through a 4-step machining process where a lot of game calls are going to be a 2-step. A lot of game calls will have a 5/8 inch drilled hole through them, the front and back, and then, just kind of the length and the amount of material determines the sound, where ours, on the barrel, it's going to open up very, very big, and that's going to allow the user, when he puts the air into the call, to get to the reed efficiently. And you would think it'd be the other way around, but the tighter that's trapped down, it's going to be a little bit tougher going to take a little bit more air, where if that barrel is opened up, it's almost like it's bottling up the air in there, and you have consistent pressure on that reed. So it allows it to react very, very easily. It allows the user to get the air there very, very efficiently. Now on the back end of the call, which is the insert, we have a compression chamber on it. So what that's going to do is it actually takes the air after it goes through the gut system and, the reed buzzes and it creates a sound, is that it actually traps the air down and rolls the sound over for you. So it's almost like there's built-in back pressure in the call. All these things don't take away from the performance of the call. It's still, as loud as you want it to be. The range is all there. It's just that the call is working more for you. And I think that's what guys have liked over the years, is that, you can blow the call, basically one-handed, or if you're, using your flag or whatever, the call is doing a lot of the work for you, whereas it vice versa, maybe with a different brand. So that's our EX3 X Series, set up to sound like a big goose, very, very efficient, very, very user-friendly. A couple years after that, we came out with the EX Reflex. Now, the Reflex compared to the X Series is going to be a half an inch shorter. It's going to be a 1/4 inch shorter on the barrel and a 1/4 inch shorter on the insert. And the Reflex was designed to sound more like an interior goose, somewhere between your 5'6" to about 9-pound geese. It's still very, very powerful, but it has a little bit more of a sharper tone to it. It still has the same bored out barrel, still compression chambered insert, but the overall length of it really, really determines, how a goose call operates. Because it is a little bit shorter, it's going to be a little bit more advanced. It's going to take a little bit more being technically correct on your end as far as the air pressure and also your hands, because one thing when you shorten up a goose call, the air gets into the goose call and it gets out of the goose call faster. So what that means is that you have to put the air in a little bit more perfectly and use your hands a little bit more perfectly at the end to get it right. Now, is it a drastic difference from the X Series? No, but you will notice a difference. And that's why, back in the day when flute calls were so popular, is because, they were longer and the call basically did everything for you. You just had to add in some cold air. With a short reed, it's hot air. So you got to, control the call a little bit more. So that was our EX Reflex. And then a couple years after that, a couple years ago now, we came out with the MG Rush goose call. And this is kind of a hybrid of the two. We took a little bit of parts off the X Series and a little bit parts off the Reflex and made the MG Rush. So with this goose call, you're getting a very, very short barrel. So you're going to get a reaction time. It's going to be fast to react. But the insert is a little bit longer, more bored out, still has the compression chamber, so it's going to keep a bigger goose tone to it. So a lot of guys are liking that because it has a big, powerful, full tone, but it runs really, really fast, which is kind of a rare combination with goose calls. It's always a give and take. You gotta take here to give there to take there, and so this one, we have a very short barrel, so it's going to be fast reacting, but it's going to keep that bigger goose tone to it. So a lot of guys that like the X Series, but they wanted a little bit faster call, are going to the Rush. And then a lot of guys that are maybe a little more advanced that, want a ton of range, like the Reflex. And then a lot of guys just day in and day out, a smooth, easy running call with a big goose tone like the X Series. So that's kind of our difference in the three.
Yeah. Yeah, and your calls are very at our store, we got a huge display of calls, and when they pick up your goose calls, they're very, with that compression chamber and the barrel, how you design that, they're very friendly to run for guys, even if they're all different ranges. If they're starting out, that's one of the easier calls for me to get them to start hearing the right tone, to make some of the notes when they're starting out, because they're trying to figure out their air. But then even intermediate to the advanced, both those guys really, really gravitate towards the Molt Gear when you put it on top of the glass counter because of that compression chamber and all, and it's just a smooth running call. Just great call, very, very easy. I wouldn't say it's not easy to blow sometimes. Goose call it's definitely different from a lot of other game calls, But this is very smooth running call, and it's very easy to start picking it up and easy to teach somebody on one of these calls. I've definitely noticed that. Sometimes there's some high-end calls, and they're more made for the advanced caller. So they almost kind of, the intermediate and the novice almost kind of don't, understand or get that call when they pick it up on the glass counter, and they can't make it, sound anywhere right. It kind of hurts them. But your calls they seem to fit about everybody. I've seen really, really talented guys make this goose call, do a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of really goosey stuff. And then the intermediate guys are really liking it, and the novice are really able to start hearing a honk, getting it figured out, and which is the best for a beginner, because if you go out and buy a goose call just blindly, kind of don't ever mess with it, and you just go buy an expensive one, it might not be anything, it might not be right for you at all, and you're going to hang it up, put it away, and not try it again. But these Molt Gears are not like that. I mean, a lot of people really, really enjoy them, and I think they're easy to figure out as far as if you're a novice.
Well, that's exactly right. If someone can pick up a call and right out of the gate they find that they sound pretty decent with it, they're more apt to continue to work with it, because they're like, okay, hey, I sound pretty good. You know what? I'm going to keep blowing on this.
I'm getting somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're just going to become a better caller. And then, that leads to, well, let me know, what do these sounds mean? When do I make this sound and why? And then, there's the Bad Grammar Academy. And then it's a continual learning process. And, I'm nowhere near as good at goose calling as Chandler is even, but I mean, it's a constant learning process.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the big thing about them is, we wanted to make a goose call that was efficient, user-friendly, but be able to do everything a goose caller wants out of a call as well. So, it goes through that extra machining, and, we also, like you said earlier, we want them to make them look good, it's something on your lanyard, and, so the design, the outside design, the look of it, that's very important too. So just top to bottom, we try to put a lot of time and effort into them. And, all of them are hand polished by hand here in the shop. A lot of guys will use a flame polishing. We use a hand polishing. We engrave them right here. We hand paint them right here, and obviously hand tune them right here. So there's a lot of hands-on that goes into each one that's sent out the door, but it's something we enjoy every day.
Yeah, definitely. And these are acrylic calls that we're talking about right here. And you kind of said something about short reed versus the old kind of the flute. Could you explain that just for anybody listening who didn't really get when we said short reed? Because it's just two different style of goose calls, and everything's kind of gone to the short reed side.
Sure. So if you run over to your grandpa's or your dad's or something and dig in their old hunting closet and find their calls, you're probably going to find a resonant cavity call or a flute call. And most guys will have a flute call. And, one of the big ones back in the day was, the Big River flute call, Loman flutes, the Guide's Best, anything like that. These are longer goose calls. And when I mean longer, they're probably longer than 5.5 or 6 inches long, which is somewhere around the standard short reed goose call. A flute call is going to be, anywhere from 8, 9, 10 plus inches long. And, a flute call is something that you would use cold air into, meaning if you just blow air into a flute call that was cold, your cheeks expand, your stomach expands, that's cold air, and you just kind of say the word to it, that would be a flute call. Nowadays, a lot of guys are running short reed goose calls, and these are the goose calls that are going to be anywhere from, 3.5, 4, 5 inches long. And you use hot air into these, and that's a drastic difference from the cold air. If it's a hot day outside and you want to cool your wrist off, you blow cold air onto it. That's how you perform a flute call. With a short reed goose call, if you were to take your sunglasses or glasses off and you want to clean them, you're going to fog them up, and you have to fog them up with hot air. So it's hot air versus cold air that you run into short reed goose calls. So pretty much what determines, the look of them is obviously the overall length. Short reeds are going to be shorter, flutes are going to be longer, and then obviously the cold versus hot air. So a lot of the goose calls now that are out there and are going to be probably the most effective day in and day out are going to be the short reed versions. You can go a lot faster with them. There's a lot more range with them. A little bit more power and speed, obviously. So short reed goose calls are the ones we make.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're talking about flutes here. I have tried to blow a flute. I am no good at it. Chandler, are you?
No, I don't get it. But I started on a short reed, and that's all I've ever known. So,
Sure. I still have my first flute down in the basement. It was a Lohman 4-in-1 conversion choke flute. They're blowing a flute call is different. There's definitely probably a time and place for them. They have a very unique sound, very different sound. But of course, now I just use the short reed day in and day out. They're what's going to work the best.
Yeah. So Scott, what's the number one call you run to whenever you're on your lanyard, whenever you're out there, and what's the color?
Both of those are good questions. I carry a reflex with me every single day, and then I carry either a Rush or an X series on the other side. But the one that I personally run to out of ours every single day is primarily our EX reflex. And the reason for that is I naturally blow very, very heavy air into a call. So I can get that reflex is a little bit shorter than our X series or our Rush is. So it has more of an interior sound, but as heavy as the air that I run, I can still get that big, deep, powerful sound out of it. It's tuned up a little bit heavier for me. And I love the range. I want the air to get in there and out of it quicker. So I can control that with my hands more in my inflection that I'm putting into it. So I run an EX reflex pretty much every single day, no matter where I'm hunting. And my personal favorite is the white. It's funny. I didn't know this until we started making goose calls, but each acrylic rod that is made, they pour pigment into it and it makes the color on it. Okay. So a lot of our black, our orange or green, they got swirls in it or whatever. The white is like an OPEC white. So it's snow white, it's solid, and it's the heaviest acrylic they pretty much have. We've weighed stuff on a scale before, and the white that we use is heavier than all the other acrylic colors that we use. And because we hand polish them, we don't, change the molecular structure of the acrylic by flaming them and basically melting them so you can squish them. All ours are hand polished, so the call stays, in its same combination that it came from, when they cast molded it. So a white call naturally, and even when I'm tuning them, you can definitely tell the difference, is going to run a little bit deeper and be a little bit more powerful and take a hair more air than, like, let's say a black ghost or a green Hulk or an orange flame. So I personally run a reflex and in our glacier white color pretty much every single day.
Interesting.
My mind just got blown. I had no idea that there was that big of a weight difference in calls, and wow.
Yeah.
Or colors, excuse me.
Absolutely. Yep. So yeah, it's, you probably have to have, be around a lot of calls, blow on a lot of calls, maybe tune a lot of calls to start to really tell the difference. But it's definitely, day in and day out, that white is just gonna have a little bit more thud to it, be a little bit more powerful, take a little bit more air, just because of the density of the material that's in it, and that's a huge part of the tone that's in a goose call is, obviously what material it's made out of and how much that material weighs and the molecular structure that makes up that material.
Had no idea. Chandler, did you know anything like that color would make a difference?
No, I didn't.
If somebody would have said, hey, guess what? I'm going to pull the orange call out today because it sounds different than the white one, I would have said, you're crazy, man. But no.
They're probably going to sound, pretty similar. But they're just going to feel and if you had to use a 1 to 10 scale, probably a point or two difference, so it's not like it's oh my gosh, this black ghost is going to be really, really light and easy to run, and this glacier white is going to be really, really heavy. There's just just a tiny, you can just feel it in there, because it's not like the difference is a pound or two in the calls. These things just weigh a couple ounces, but there's definitely a little bit of difference there that you can definitely feel when you're running the call.
All right, let's see. So we've talked about acrylic calls. Now you do have delrin call as well, correct?
That's right. Yes, we make the EX3 in a delrin, the reflex in a delrin, and the rush in a delrin.
So I'm sure there's people listening that don't know exactly what the difference between acrylic and delrin is. Could you explain that for us?
Yep. Yeah, basically, I mean, the difference is the material it's made out of. Delrin is going to be, it's a very dense material. It's very, very heavy, very, very durable. So it's going to have a little bit different tone than an acrylic is. The acrylic is going to be your high end, superior tone range, and the cost of acrylic is obviously quite a bit more than delrin. To get a stick of delrin is not as expensive as acrylic is. So that's where you see the cost difference in a delrin versus an acrylic. Now, what is going to be the tone difference in the performance difference? The delrin is going to be a little bit more dense sounding. It's a heavier material, so it's going to be a little bit more dense sounding. So it's not going to have the range that an acrylic has. If you took a 1 to 10 scale, and let's say acrylic calls were 10 on the range scale, meaning how low can you go on that call and how high pitch you can go on that call, acrylic is going to be the material where you can fluctuate all the way up and down that chart, so it'd give it a 10. A delrin is going to be somewhere around like a 6 or a 7 max. Because of the material it's made out of, it's not going to have the range that an acrylic has. It doesn't have that as sharp a crack or that lowest low or the highest pitch high. It's going to sit somewhere in the middle there because of the material it's made out of. It's still a fantastic material. Very, very durable. All our delrins are machined just like our acrylics are. They still go through the 4-step process. They're still tuned up with our same phantom guts, which are worn-in guts. They still, are tuned the same by me each day. It's just that the material is going to make up the difference, one, in the cost of it, and also, two, in the performance of it. It's just not going to have the range like an acrylic has, but it's a super material. It's very, very dense, very easy running. It's got a good feeling to it, because it's a little bit softer than acrylic as well. So that's primarily the difference between a delrin call and an acrylic call is the cost of the material, the cost of the work that goes into each call, and then obviously the range and the tone of it on the performance end.
Yeah. You said something in there that maybe more advanced guys know, but you talked about broken guts. You explain a little bit about that to someone who might not understand that right at first.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So when you take apart a goose call, and I don't recommend taking them apart at all, but when you open one up and you look inside of it, you're going to notice the wedge, the tone board, and the reed sticking out of the goose call. Now, a barrel is the part that you put your mouth on and blow the air into the call. The insert is the part that you hold on to. So the part that you're holding on to when you take the call apart, you'll notice on the end of it, or, in the middle of the call, I guess, is going to be 3 parts sticking out. The wedge is on the top. Then there's going to be a reed, and then underneath that is a tone board, okay? So when you add air into a goose call, what's happening is that little piece of mylar, which is the white reed, that's going to start vibrating 100 miles an hour, okay, to create the sound. And when it vibrates, okay, it starts to wear on what is underneath that reed, which is a tone channel or a tone board, okay? Well, over time, the more you use that call and the more, you run that call and practice with it and go through hunting seasons, because of that vibration, that up and down movement of that mylar reed, it starts to wear grooves in that tone board. And over time, what's happening is is that tone board is becoming quote unquote wore in or broken. Okay. And the reason why this is significant is that, back in the day when they tuned up everything with just a fresh tone board and no grooves in it that have been worn in from the reed doesn't have very far to travel up and down. Okay. You might get, 2/10 of an inch or 3/10 of an inch of travel out of that reed up and down. Then over time, as that wears in grooves into that tone board, that reed now is flexing up and down, could be a 1/4 of an inch or more where it's running up and down. So the more flex that you can get in that reed, the better tone you'll have, the more range you'll have, and the more power you'll have out of that goose call. So what we did with our Phantom guts is that we took a set of guts that was 3 years old, and we molded them. See, when you mold guts, you take away about, 10% of that groove. So basically, theoretically, what we're looking at is a set of guts that is 2.5 years old that is going into the goose call. We feel that a set of guts perform the best between 2.5 years old and about 6 years old. That is going to be the classic, if you blow a goose call a lot, that's kind of the peak performance of a set of guts. So we took that 2.5-year-old set of guts and molded those. And so right away, you're getting a goose call that has, superior tone as far as the reed travel on it, capabilities, deepness, range, and whatnot. So that's kind of the background and how you get a set of guts broken in and what happens and pretty much why you put them into a brand new call.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize that if you've got a brand new call, that a lot of times it takes 2 years to break it in. I guess I've never really.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably using the call a lot. Yeah. They take a while to break in. So, yep. So we took that set that was about 3 years old and then, molded it. So theoretically, you lose about 10% in that molding process as far as the tone channel depth. So you have about a set of guts that is about 2.5 years old, which is just right where you want it and right starting at the peak of, the performance of that set of guts anyways.
Yeah.
Now, I know with duck calls, I'll start a season with one, and I always think it sounds a little bit more seasoned by the end of the, end of the year. But 2 years. I mean, that's a lot of time. But of course, that's what it is. That's you spend time with a call, you become fond of it. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of good relationship absolutely. You start developing with the call, and you get that trusty favorite that is your go-to.
Absolutely. Get a little donut stuck in there, a little coffee in it. Yeah. It becomes time tested over time. So absolutely.
Speaking of which, you were talking about you don't recommend pulling goose calls apart and fiddling with them. What about cleaning? Talking about, the coffee and donut, if it gets down in there. What do you recommend?
You know what? I'm looking at my reflex right now. The reflex, when we switched the engraving on them for this year, obviously my old reflex was, 4 or 5 years old or whatever it was. And I never cleaned it once, not even like take it apart, anything like that. You don't really have to. I mean, it's going to take a lot to get something wedged into a goose call and for it not to operate. They're a little less finicky than a duck call, It's not going to be like saliva or anything like that. But, if you do want to clean the goose call, take the call apart from the barrel of the insert, just wipe out the barrel on the inside, run water, or just, blow air in over the reeds of the gut system, and then just use your finger to wipe out the back. And that's all I recommend. You don't have to take the call apart as far as the gut system, anything like that. The reed, and the guts that are in my reflex, have been the same for, this will be the 6th season of it now, when we came out with the prototypes and whatnot. So, a reed and a set of guts, they'll last you a long time, and I haven't retuned it in 6 years. It's still never even really taken apart, so you don't have to, clean or do much to them. But if you want to, just wipe out the inside, but don't pull out the guts or the wedge or the reed or anything like that. And you can just run water down through them and kind of wipe out the back. But necessarily, you don't really have to do that either. They're pretty tough.
Gotcha. So you said you had your goose call next to you.
Mine personally is set up to make about 4 or 5 different notes, really, but it's set up to make them as loud and as powerful and deep and nasty as I can get them, just because it's about the timing and about those couple notes that trigger geese every single day. So yeah, it's and those guts are pretty worn in too, so it makes it a little bit heavy, and like we talked about, the longer the guts run, just the bigger and meaner and nastier it's going to sound.
Yeah. Timing is by far what I really rely on as far as goose calling. I'm not the fastest, but I love watching them, and I feel like I've been successful by paying attention to what they're going to do. And you're just kind of guessing and watching their heads and watching what their wings are doing as far as what they're thinking. And I'm able to, if you can figure that stuff out, you're able to manipulate and get these birds to commit to your spread a lot more often. I mean, besides maybe either blowing them out, or maybe not blowing enough and not keeping them interested. There's always, every day is a little bit different, and you never know if a goose wants you to just get him, blow it all the way in until he puts his feet on the ground, or if you need to get him to kind of cup up and look and then shut up, and just maybe get them interested every once in a while. Watching these geese, really learning how to do that is my favorite thing. I'll sit there and do that and let them land and let them get up, and I'll still have a great day if I didn't even bring a gun, because it's just fun to It's fun to do that.
Absolutely. And that's the case for any, hunting you do, whether it's, waterfall or whitetail or whatever you're hunting, is just your awareness of your surroundings. Pay attention to, what you're seeing, how the birds are reacting, the sounds they're making. Pay attention to the weather, how it affects them, their change. Just I think having an open mind and really paying attention to what is affecting them based on the weather and hunting and the sounds and the decoy spreads. That's the key, I think, to getting better over a long period of time, for sure.
So let me ask you this. You don't have to give any secrets out, but what's like let's say your favorite amount of decoys, or your favorite style of hunting, and maybe, favorite place, field, water, different types of fields. What do you have that you're working with up there that is like your favorite way to do things? You don't have to give any secrets out, but.
No. I tell you what, I've been fortunate enough to travel, a lot of different places to hunt waterfall, in particular, Canada geese, and in particular, big Canada geese. Right here in Rochester with the history, I shot my first goose here. Started guiding here when I was 14. This is where we, live and work now. So my favorite place to hunt is obviously at home here, and the hunting is good. It's definitely changed over the last, 10 years with the shutdown of Silver Lake, which is a coal burning plant that discharged the water back into Silver Lake to keep it open. They shut that down. But favorite place to hunt is Rochester. Favorite style of hunting is definitely traffic hunting, refuges. Rochester has a 66.25 square mile refuge, and our fields are located around the refuge line here. I've hunted Rochester, 25 years, and I can probably count on two hands how many times I've hunted the X, which means fields that they're feeding in. It's all traffic hunting. So my bread and butter is traffic hunting, in particular around refuges. I love migrator hunting as well, and I love hunting Manitoba. But I would say right around Rochester, traffic. And I think the key to any success or a little nugget of information is, how do you change each and every day to hunt the same birds that you hunted yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago? You'll hear the term, man, we need new birds. Our birds are stale. Well, chances are you're hunting and the way you hunt is pretty stale. So constantly changing it up. I've been fortunate enough over 25 years to collect a lot of different decoys. Never sold one. Still have the same 2,500, 3,000 black and white shadows we made back in the day. Still have the 747 shells that you can hide an 8-year-old or under. I've got Dave Smith decoys, Bigfoot, Final Approach, DOAs, Dakotas, Big Owls, just a ton of different arsenal to throw at these birds. Some people will, just want the most realistic, highest looking thing for each day, when that may be not the case. If you're hunting traffic, you want to stick out more, and that black color sticks out more. If you're on the X, you want to use something a little more realistic because it's more about finishing. So any kind of little, I guess it wouldn't be a secret or anything like that, is to constantly show those birds something new, whether it's the location where you're hunting them in the field, how you're hunting them, when you hunt them, and constantly watching that weather. Because, hunting around Rochester, it's not fun. It's really, really tough. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of hunters. Our geese get here, like I said, probably here within the next week, and we'll still be hunting them, mid-December. The birds that are here now, we'll be hunting them the rest of the year. So the constant change is primarily what you're looking for. And us here, too, in our fields, is we hunt out of pits, which is great for location, but tough to change up as far as location in the field. So the look of your decoys, the different brands, the different styles, the look of your decoy spread, the calling, and whatnot. So that's probably the biggest thing is I love hunting trafficking refuge birds, and switching it up day in and day out is probably my bread and butter. That's what I like to do the most.
Yeah. Yeah, so we see a lot of guys, they want their decoys, their goose decoys, they want to all have the same brand. And, that's not the case for you. You sound like you have about everything that's been out on the market at one point or time.
I got everything, man. I got everything. It's like fishing lures. You can't throw the same black and blue spinnerbait every single day of the year and expect the same results every single day of the year. You need to keep switching it up. So like I said, I've amassed a lot of grain bins full of decoys. Fortunate enough that you have them at your disposal, but don't be afraid to go out there and just, collect different decoys. And we use different brands within the hunt every single day, and different styles. We'll mix in shadows and full bodies and shells and sleepers and you name it. So it's half part realism, half part looking different from the next guy. So that's what we find is the key up here.
Yeah. So
and a lot of places.
Yeah. I feel like then blowing a goose call running traffic is pretty important. I mean, because it's it's mind-boggling to think, when you have I remember there was a hunt a couple years ago. We had 2,000 full bodies out, and we had 5 callers in a pit, and that amassed I suppose 140 calling titles, and we were calling as hard as we can to the point where we had headaches just to get singles and doubles to break off. So you don't really, you kind of feel sorry for the next guy that's just trying to out there to enjoy his Saturday afternoon by himself, but doesn't have much of a chance when we're, have to go through this amount of effort just put a couple of birds in the decoys or whatnot. But calling is single-handedly the X factor in today's hunting. A lot of people have a lot of decoys. A lot of people, and especially now with social media, in the networking connections, you watch around social media, and the hunts anymore aren't a couple guys out hunting. There's a lot of guys out hunting in a particular field. It might be 7, 10, 13 guys out hunting, and all those guys bring their decoys together. If 15 years ago the average spread was 120, now the average spread is 300 or 400. And the calling too. A lot of these guys are getting better at calling, and that's single-handedly. You can pay for a really good spot to hunt.
You can pay to have a lot of decoys. You can pay for a pit to have good concealment, but you can't pay for calling. That is one thing that you got to put your time and your practice and your energy into is to become better on a goose call, because, we see it up here all through the Midwest. Just the location and decoys is not enough anymore. You got to really be able to blow a goose call. It can change a bad hunt into an okay hunt, an okay hunt into a good one, and a good one into a great one in a hurry. So that's probably the single most important factor that we see day in and day out, is to be able to blow a goose call and command geese to make them do something that they weren't planning on doing that day.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy that you were talking about how many decoys you had and how many guys you had and calling titles, and that it was that difficult to pull in birds sometimes. I mean, you put me in an environment like that, I wouldn't hold a prayer. I'd be eating snacks and drinking coffee all day. That's about it. It sounds like
it's a tough place to hunt up here. Like I said, any place can be tough, right? It's, the old adage back in the day was the further south a bird gets, the tougher they become. That's not the truth. Some of the tougher birds I've hunted have been in Canada. It's how long a goose or a duck stays in an area. That's when they become tough. If I were to drive down to Kansas City tonight and meet up with you guys, I'd need directions how to get there. I'd need to know where the best places to eat are, where the place to stay is. That's just like new geese coming into an area. Now, the longer I'm in Kansas City, I've learned where the good areas are, the bad areas, and whatnot. So when birds become really tough is when they've spent a long time in a certain area. They know the safe spots. They know the safe fields. They know the flight paths that are safe. They know how you hunt them. They've become a condition to the way you hunt them. So anytime you start dealing with a goose or a duck that's been in an area for more than 10 days, they start to become tough. Now you start to deal with a ton of residents like we got here in Minnesota, early migrators with the molt migrators, and those new birds come in, they look to those residents. So any place can be tough, but, I've traveled to a lot of places, and, man, I don't know if I've seen one tougher than our backyard right here. So it's but any place can be that way as long as they spend enough time in an area.
Yeah.
And I can see exactly what you were talking about earlier. This just brings the back to point. You were talking about people complaining about stale birds. Well, it could be their hunting style is stale, and you start hitting a week or 10 days. Exactly, start switching the way you're doing things, how you're putting stuff out.
They've seen your blind and decoys.
It's not the way you hunt when times get tough. It's the way you hunt when times are good. Because that's when you're putting the pressure on the birds. That's when they're becoming conditioned to the way you hunt them and how you see them. If you get a huge influx of new birds into town, we'll run, 200, 250 decoys. We're around a refuge. These birds are used to sitting with a lot of geese and feeding with a lot of geese. So you can't go out there with, 10 decoys and expect them to get excited over that. You need some numbers. You need some calling, and then we'll gradually, we'll put out a very basic decoy spread, almost like the old mom and pop U-shaped spread, and then we'll start to build up our numbers, change up the decoy spread, change up our calling, and whatnot as they become tougher, because we got to hunt these fields every single day on the same geese that are coming out. We might have, 30, 40, 45,000 geese in town, but there's only 4,000 or 5,000 of them that are leading a certain direction. So if you hunt that field for 5-6 days in a row straight, you're hunting those same 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 geese that are flying over that field straight. Well, after a day and a half is when they start to figure it out a little bit, and it can get about tougher for a lot of guys. But it's how you hunt when times are good, and not showing them, trying not to show them everything, and getting away with what you can get away with. And hunting stale is, I think, if a lot of guys would ask themselves that, how many times did you hunt on an edge versus the middle, or use less decoys than you actually have in the trailer, and change up your calling and the flagging? A lot of guys will do the same thing day in and day out until it works again. Anything in waterfowl hunting will work once every 2 weeks. No matter what you do, once every 2 weeks, you're going to have a pretty good hunt. well, we get reminded that that's the way we should do it. And then the next day, not so good. Next day, we go through about a 5-6 week drought. We need new birds. And then, boom, what we've been doing works again because it's going to work once every 2 weeks. And then we're reassured that's how you should do it every single day. So the biggest thing you can be a victim of is repetition and constantly changing that up and watching how you're hunting based on the arrival of new birds and how long they've been there is probably going to help out the most, I would think.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Let's see. We're looking like we're about 57 minutes. Chandler, do you have any final questions, any final thoughts,
I just, Scott, I really enjoyed some of your views on stuff on the Goose Society or the Duck Society or the bad grammars. And I definitely think if anybody listening to this wants to get more than what we've talked about here, they need to go check some of that stuff out. The academy that you got going on, did you say you had a certain amount of spots when that first came out, or was that like a promotion deal? They look like you
that was we did we did an email sign up before it went live, and then the first 250, the next 250, the first 1,000, whatnot, got into some drawings, and we'll continue to do those, but you can visit just www.badgrammaracademy.com, and that has all the information there on that. And it's just a great way to accommodate the busy lifestyle and being able to practice, wherever you are and when you find time.
Yeah. And if you guys out there listening that want to get into goose calling and the short read, and you want to be able to blow some of these notes they hear these guys, comp callers or good hunters call, I mean, these Molt Gears are a great call to learn on, and they can do all these things you want to do as far as the notes and stuff. They're definitely a really, really well-built call, and we see customers just by being in the store who pick them up, and they really enjoy them. And we sell a ton of them, and definitely check them out on our website. This is a great call, great product.
Mm-hmm. Lots to choose from, color combos and 3 different styles, and yeah, absolutely. I guess my final thought or my final takeaway for the day would be something that you mentioned earlier, Scott, that it's really got me thinking is complaining about, is it the birds that are stale or is it me? Really. Because 100% of the time you always complain about it, and yet you are doing the same thing every day, but you expect different results, and that's just, maybe we're the ones that are stale.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that.
Don't be afraid to try something new. It could never hurt. And the bottom line is you're out hunting, you're having fun, and if you shoot a few by trying something new, great. If you don't, heck, still beats a good day at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, everybody across the U.S. should start to see new birds move into their area. There's going to be a pretty big front that's going to blow in, and there is a massive amount of waterfall just across the border on the Highway 1 corridor through Canada. And you're going to get a freeze line wave that's going to come in. It's going to push a lot of ducks. Going to push a lot of snow geese and specks. The Canadas will start to move, especially the big ones. The little ones will roll, but it should be a pretty good one, and it was a substantial one because 10 days after that, it just gets a little bit nastier, a little bit colder each day. You're going to get some snowstorms up through the Midwest in various areas, so start looking north into the skies because there's going to be a lot of birds on the move.
I can't think of anything else. Chandler, you got anything else?
No.
All right. That's a wrap.